Equality in the workplace is certainly an uphill battle for many women, so it may come as a surprise that more than 80% of women don't want to work for another woman. Well, why? Lucy Brogden joins us now to find out more. Good morning, Lucy.
Hey, Lucy. How are you? Welcome.
This is fascinating research. Tell us about this study.
Well, my study was quite anecdotal. I was doing career coaching a couple of years ago with men and women, broad range of backgrounds. And when you're doing that work, you say to people, what's the next job look like? And I suddenly got struck by the number of women that could articulate the companies they wanted to work for, the type of work, and then consistently they'd say, oh, by the way, I don't want to work for another woman. So I started to track these numbers, and we got to around 80%. I asked colleagues, and they were getting similar numbers. And I knew that was, you know, a small, not very scientific sample. But if you go to the literature, there's huge studies all replicating these findings. Gallup in the US has actually tracked this for 60 years, and we're still not shifting the data too much, which is really a shame.
It checks out with my... in workplaces I've been in, there have been huge schisms between female employees and female bosses where it was pretty much an all-out Cold War. Like it was, and you know,
really?
not talking and
do you know why, Lucy?
Undermining.
Are there reasons given? Are they competitive with...
There's issues of competitiveness, I think, certainly, and, you know, our stereotypes are quite primal. So I think it's really incumbent on women to continually check those. If we don't acknowledge behaviour, we can't change it. So new women coming into the workforce have to understand that just because they have a female boss, she's not their best friend. She's a boss. She's got a job to do and be a boss.
And one of the things that raised me, you remember the surgeon Gabrielle McMullen who blew the whistle on sexism in the medical industry, and she talks about how often when you have an industry where there is actually so male-dominated that if a woman cracks through and actually makes it to the top level, it's so rare and they feel so sort of lucky to have gotten there that they will actively undermine other women coming through because they think, well, I've made it and I've got the spot for the woman, and that's it. I'm going to cut everyone off at the legs.
In my experience, I've had one or two female bosses, and I've always found them to be an ally and quite supportive. So that's been my experience. I haven't really found, you know, maybe I'm going against your findings, Lucy. But I also think that a woman leader needs to be sort of wise and supportive as well. And so perhaps, I don't know, as you say, once they get to that position, they become really protective of it.
And that the data does bear that out. And I think, you know, I'm always mindful of Madeleine Albright's great comment, there's a special place in hell for women that don't look after other women.
I love that quote, because I think as a woman, that comes with a responsibility to look after other you know, women around you.
So instead of pulling that ladder up behind, as some women bosses do, I think it's really incumbent on all of us to look at our journey, acknowledge the struggles, and some women really sacrifice to get to their positions. Acknowledge that sacrifice, celebrate their success, but at the same time realise it's not actually character building to make the struggle the same for everybody. Make it easier.
Is there a difference in the different type of professions? Like, I mean, we're talking about, like, if there are fewer women in the workplace, perhaps the women who are there are more aggressive and they're also more protective of their position because there's not as many of them. Whereas maybe where Ange worked at the ABC, for example, or in female-dominated professions, that would not be a problem because it's simply the norm. So don't have that.
Female-dominated professions have their own set of issues, and there's huge studies around nurses, particularly, and the culture there and bullying there. Interestingly, when you look at the bullying data, more women bully other women. Men are much more even-handed in their bullying targets. So there's some real behavioural things going on.
Surprising, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's
really
surprising and disappointing. And I think as women, and all people in a workplace, it goes back to, you know, David Morrison's great comment about, you know, the behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you accept. Exactly. And, you know, he was talking at the very sinister level of sexual abuse in the workplace. But it comes right down to the small issues of bullying and behaviours that we just see that aren't right. So as female managers, we maybe need to check with each other and say, are you being as fair on all your team as you might be? You know, I've noticed you giving so-and-so a slightly harder time than the rest of them. What's going on there? And then we can change that behaviour. But again, if we don't acknowledge it, we can't change it.
It's fascinating research. Lucy, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.